Thank you, Deborah, for having me here. It's always a pleasure, and the topic being very close to our heart and the subject that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, good morning still. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sudhir Kunder, and I represent DE-CIX as we are called. Uh, it's based out of Frankfurt, Germany. Deutsche Commercial Internet Exchange is how it is known in its full form. Been with this organization for the past 6 years now almost. We run an interconnection platform which comprises of internet exchange, cloud exchange, data center interconnect, and a host of other services that we bring to the table. Been in India for 6 years, as I said, and we are celebrating as of now the 30-year anniversary of having run a very, very efficient and a large global interconnection system.
Well, since you are with the interconnected, since you understand the interconnected nature of things, it's obvious that, data center and digital infrastructure cannot exist in isolation. So in view of that, what is your vision, when we say the word peering, what is your vision of the word peering, and how can we foster a strong culture of collaborating?
Yeah. Very, very pertinent question, especially for the folks who are here. Uh, the whole idea of collaboration first starts with the basic endeavor of creating awareness. So that's how our journey has been here in India specifically, where you bring in the value proposition that a interconnection platform brings in with peering and other services. So in layman's language, typically it would mean for you to be able to have control on your traffic, have traffic being available locally rather than it go on the World Wide Web and then come back to you, and a host of other uh, educational efforts that we need to do with our partners in the data center industry, in the telco space, and for the CDNs and ISPs as such. So when we typically talk about peering, people normally feel that, oh, that's a internet service provider kind of a setup. But no, when an organization like Udan comes to me 4 years back and tells me, I want a 10 gig of peering, that is very heartening at that point of awareness that an Indian enterprise, which is the second largest B2B organization today, understands what this piece means for them in terms of accelerating their responses, having security, scalability, robustness, all at the click of a button.
Strong peering culture exists in, say, East Asia, in Southern Europe, parts of Africa, EMEA, that region. But when it comes to developing a roadmap for building that culture, for building a peering-driven connectivity ecosystem, what are the key elements parties here in India must consider while planning that?
Very, very pertinent question. While we've seen a lot of development in the Indian space, and I am very happy as well as proud to let you all know that having started in 2019, DE-CIX Mumbai became number one in terms of connected customers across 29 countries, 153 exchanges across the Asia Pacific region, and we maintained that lead for 4 years post that, right? So from an education standpoint, we did a lot in terms of the life cycle. And that is where these questions come, especially from a customer who's onboarding with us, being a global entity. They come and look at us as their consultants to guide them, to help them navigate towards the decision-making process, given the landscape that we are in. First, foremost comes the first factor is the ease of doing business and the way they will be able to get various components that make peering an easily serviceable, uh, line item in the long list of services that they would want to go to. First, second, obviously, would be how is this going to help them achieve their latency goals? Because we've been the ones who've been uh, pushing this narrative of latency is the new currency.
I know, Ivo said that to me in an
Yeah,
interview earlier.
yeah,
Could you
yeah.
elaborate on that specifically? Try to put it in context for, the Indian ecosystem.
Yeah. So if I have to bring a very, very easily understandable B2B and B2C example here. What we mean by latency is the new currency is today, whatever decisions you take as an end user or as a user who's an enterprise, the first thing that you see is even a 10 millisecond of improvement is going to help you achieve results greater by 14 to 15% in terms of customer conversations and stuff like that. So if you run a large uh, customer serving kind of an internet service providing business where you have somebody in this forum right next door in a panel, that gentleman runs a business that helps him get 3x of revenues because he's connected to a network that has all the gaming networks sitting in their platform. So when you do your gaming, the first thing is latency. If you have high latency, God only help you in your games, right? So that is the end user, whether it is smart homes or whether it is smart cities. So now you come to the other part where we say a cloud-enabled customer at DE-CIX sitting out of Bangalore going to AWS Singapore via one of the largest and the well-respected telcos like Tatacom gets a latency of 330 milliseconds on Bangalore to AWS Singapore route. Cut to our direct cloud model where he comes to us, the same last mile is available for him, 40 millisecond,
Wow,
330 to 40.
that is wow.
So that's what we do when it comes to end users, ease of doing business. He had to do nothing but to just become aware that this is a service that has been available in India. And that is the real meaning rather than the dialogue of latency is the new currency, you see. And 4 years, not a single trouble ticket. That is one of the biggest credits that we have.
You know, but I'm glad you brought up the whole international element to it, putting India in context. We also have to take into account that, you know, infrastructure, it plans multiple geographies and jurisdictions, and that leads to certain challenges to collaboration, doesn't it? What would some of those challenges be, and how do you propose we overcome them?
So, that's a very tricky question, actually speaking. uh, while we operate pan-India and globally as well, I predominantly run the India plus our countries kind of a outreach. And we see, even within India, uh, various states have various rules and regulations. Uh, this is still looked at as a cash cow, network in particular. Just to give you a context, our geography in itself is humongous.
True.
You make, and 9 out of 10 of my international friends still don't appreciate that unless I explain it in this way. You make Uttar Pradesh, and I'm sure a lot of people might not know here,
Yeah.
a different country, it will be the 5th largest country in the world.
Yeah.
One state, right?
200 million people. That's the population of Uttar Pradesh, which is close to the population of the United States.
Right. So when you deal with fiber, because that is one of the key elements that you need, various uh, states and cities have exorbitant amount of fees. Then there are multiple licenses. Then there are multiple rules that you need to play by. So in a country where we have 6 lakh villages, we have only 2 lakh 6,000 villages still connected after so many years of independence. Uh, there is so much that we can do when we are able to build a collaborative nature, which we are doing in our own shape and form as a private enterprise. But I think when like-minded individuals and corporates as well as the government come into play, there is so much that we can do. You have BharatNet with about 6,92,000 kilometers of fiber available. You have Airtel in itself with about 1,30,000 kilometers of fiber available.
Yeah.
You have Railtel with about 65,000 kilometer fiber available. And still, you see only 38% of the mobile towers being fiberized. So this itself says that we as a nation have not been able to see the effective way in which a public-private partnership can do magic for our country per se when we want to aspire for a $1 trillion
True.
digital economy out of the $3 trillion that we want. This is one of the most important factors that I think eventually we'll have to see coming into play, and I'm very happy to see a recent announcement by DRDO which actively developed and deployed a defense system solely made by them. And once the small thing happened recently, the 7-day, 10-day piece, they opened it up for private enterprises to come and take it to a larger base in India. This is a mind shift that I hope and pray will also come into our part of the business, where majority of the data center investments are only being looked at, but having AI also come into play now. If you have the GPUs, you have the storage, you have the best five-star data center available, and you don't have a low latency network,
Yeah.
I don't think we'll.
You know, I'm curious about that because you were mentioning Uttar Pradesh, and I was thinking in the heartland also, now there are emerging markets for the digital infrastructure industry, and they will also have their own demands for networking, network infrastructure. So, what are some of the big gaps that you may have identified that need to be filled right away?
Yeah, so as I said, one of the most important part is a private. See, why should a enterprise? Let me again come
Yeah,
based out of Pune
yeah,
uh, need to struggle to get something that should have come to him by the way, go 350 kilometers in his dairy, use IoT, which in
yeah.
itself is very heartening for me in person and as a professional. Go to Railtel for the fiber, come to us for AWS Connect, and do all the mechanizations. If we would have had this part stitched up well, and you
Yeah.
have the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities actually having
True.
an ecosystem. We did tie up with an organization 2 years back, and we made an announcement as well,
Yeah.
where they aspire to have 100 edge pops across India
Wow.
with fiberization and everything put together. So the intent is there, but I think as I have been pushing this small 2 cent of mine, that it cannot be one enterprise or two or three companies who want to do this. It has to be a cohesive policy and orchestration of a success layer that we want to see 24 months and 36 months from today.
So, since you're talking about policy, could you elaborate with an example? What kind of regulatory, what kind of a role can regulatory authorities play in enabling strategic pairing and maintain smooth functioning connectivity ecosystem? Because you said there are different states with different laws. Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu probably fare better than most other states. But what would you like to see? What's your wish list if you could talk to the regulatory authorities today?
Uh, well, I'm glad to let you know that we contribute to a lot of white papers that the government calls for. And one of the only interconnection platform that does that, apart from a data center, who also has this business happening for them. And that's why I'm very passionate about doing this, because top three things bring ease of doing business at each level. 75% of the traffic in India today is out of these metros and Bangalore and Hyderabad put together, for example. But that's not the true India. We need to think about the Bharat as well as we want to think about India.
Exactly, the heartland. And also, I mean, we talk about technology, but we also have to look into how technology is empowering our MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So, outreach to those areas, there are clearly challenges. And since you mentioned some of these states which are not economically, as advanced as Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, so what kind of a regulatory environment would make it easier for you to
So I
function?
was coming to that. So what typically this means is that having seen what an interconnection ecosystem can do to economies in the regions where it gets deployed, we would want to see a more cohesive single window kind of an approval system, more of liberty given to use the public infrastructure at a committed model. Of course, nobody's wanting to have a free ride here,
True,
but
true.
putting all these right elements into play and looking at a public-private partnership, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that, see, we keep pushing, and trust me, I will take 2 minutes more. The understanding of what a SME, SMB, or an enterprise, I unlearned when I joined DE-CIX. Because today, my smallest customer is so-called SME, works out of a 350 square feet office in a Rescom building. For last 4 years, he is my 1 gig of AWS customer, and now we are talking about 5 gigs port of Azure Connect.
Wow.
So there has been a huge shift in what definitions we used to have, and hence it's about time that we look at connectivity as not a cost structure, but as a method to take your P&L to a better level in the coming time, both as a country and as organizations.
So, what do you think we can learn from the more mature international markets? What are some of the international best practices and innovations that you have had your eye on and you're probably deploying in other geographies because your
Yes.
organization
Yes.
functions globally? What would you like to bring to India and how would you like to implement it?
So there are a lot of best practices that we started off when there was a little bit of mocking as well, that why would these people want to do this? So one of the key things that we brought to the table is have a 100% hygiene based secure network. When people didn't appreciate that cost was an important factor, even if you give handout outside the data center, people were more than happy to save that 10% more. But I believe always that these things are an investment, and even at the cost of letting business go, all our data centers today, at 62 in total in India, are grade 1 data centers. We don't give connectivity outside. That is number one. Number two, there is a lot of interventions that we bring in terms of how we enable both our international customers and our ISPs and enterprises here in India to onboard with the best possible cost, with the best possible technology, and the best possible uh, ecosystem that we bring to them, because being network neutral and data center neutral is the founding principle that we still run with after 30 years. But eventually I would then guide them to be there where it actually matters for them, number one. Number two, in a very short manner, uh, there are reverse best practices that we sent from here to our global
Oh,
yeah.
could you tell us a bit about that?
So 2019 Jan, we came out with a 24 by 7 contact center, which was cloud based through a telco. So earlier, you were only available on an email, and that it had its own problems. So now I don't call my engineers or I don't call my backend team on a cell phone. I call that single access number so that there is a test. Even if at 2 o'clock there is a customer who calls me, I call that number. So for 6 years almost now, we have a contact center which is 24 by 7, although we are not a large organization. So one is that being accessible, available anytime, 24/7.
But that must be a challenge as well.
Of course it is, but when you build a avant-grade network, you don't have so many downtimes, you don't have so many problems. But then whenever there is a problem, how you respond to it is very, very important in our business. One, obviously that. Second, we started running the Indian version of DE-CIX Academy, which we do as a part and parcel of our endeavor to make people more aware of what this is. You can be from an SME, SMB enterprise, or so-called competition, because I believe all of us are collaborators in this business.
True, true, true.
Yeah.
Friendly rivalry.
I actually don't do that also, because when you are an interconnection platform with that kind of a spread, there is enough and more on my plate to be bothered about what others are doing, right? So even if somebody is welcome from the other side, we have put in 4,500 hours of man hours in training, both in person and online. And that is reaping good dividends in terms of the way this business is being perceived, as I said, not as a cost structure, but as something that is going to help each and every organization where you come from. I've, I've recently come across somebody from NVIDIA coming and asking me, this is the geography where we want to deploy, and these are the 3 data centers. Are you there with them? So when people understand that this is not a luxury but a necessity, these are the interventions that we do. We brought in Etisalat into India, which means that India to rest of the world is now, rest of the Middle East is now available. We brought in Flag Telecom partnership into India, which means that other than the telcos who are friends of mine, the cost to serve a customer on the other end, whether it is Dallas or Paris, becomes far, far more easier, probably 30-40% more economical as compared to what it would have been if we would have depended on a duopoly. So these are the initiatives that I feel we've brought to the table, and we've seen a lot of our friends in the newer markets in the DE-CIX ecosystem wanting to adopt from us, so that as a team we come out as winners.
Perfect. Finally, when it comes to developing the ecosystem in India, uh, what is your vision for Chennai specifically? Because you are now in Chennai, we're holding the Chennai CDC. How do you see it evolving to match up to, say, some of the more mature ecosystems in East Asia, whether it's Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan? What kind of an evolution do you see? Because you're leading the business here. What's your roadmap? What's your vision?
Very nice question, and I couldn't hide the smile that came on my face. Because when I spoke about Chennai being the next El Dorado for us here in India from a data center investment point of view, and the reasons why it was way back in 2021. And I was in a forum just about 8-10 days back when the Honorable Minister was also here. And it felt so nice to see that he's talking about data center investments now doubling from here to in the range of about 550 megawatts. Back then, what was true or what people thought as hypothetical dreaming is true today, because you have 6 submarine cables coming in. You have 2 more coming in anytime now. The government's policy typically wanting to be proactive, the single window that I said, and a lot of other piece. And no offense meant to other states, but you still are in the intellectual capital of India. So you get the
Definitely.
right kind of manpower, you get the right kind of policies. Over and above that, the way you saw the moratorium being lifted, which is how that article got covered in Singapore as well, because I said even if that moratorium gets lifted, it will be for a short project, and that is how it happened. They put a cap on it saying that nothing more than 3 megawatt will come. So we still haven't seen the repatriation of Indian data lying outside coming in.
Yeah, that's going to be the next big thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. So much so that you will have the AI bandwagon running, you will have all other things happening in South India, but you still haven't seen our part of the GDPR actually kicking off.
That's going to be the perfect storm. How do you see that unfolding?
I think while I was sitting here and I heard a lot of people talking about the right comments being made, saying that you should not look at it as a negative comment. Uh, if all these 21 players in the data center market begin small, put together, play their game well, then the consolidation which will happen tomorrow will not be so painful as we saw the telecom consolidation happen. Because I feel that that is one picture that is yet to evolve in terms of what all these capacities that have got built or getting built will eventually get consumed. So it's about the kind of ecosystem, and that's why we keep pushing this narrative of connectivity, because people are more than happy with the other 2 or 3 components, and this gets a stepmotherly treatment, if I have to say so, sometimes. And I have spent humongous amount of time to put that into perspective, that when that day comes, you will look for the right kind of ecosystem that a data center player has. And I'm very, very hopeful that the next 5 years, there's no looking back as far as Indian market is concerned for our piece. There is, of course, a lot of competition in the nearby, and we are operating in those competitive markets also. But I'm an optimist, and I would want to look at the headroom that we have rather than look outside.
And you're optimistic about the growth of the peering ecosystem here as well?
Absolutely. So, peering, if I have to give you some context, 27,000 terabits is how it is going to grow from now to the next 5 years, up to 30 internationally,
Wow.
from wherever it is today. So, look at India. We've been doubling our data every 2 years, so to speak. 10 years back, we were a 250 million user base. Today, we are 900 million, right? Our per average consumption was uh, 1.6 gig. Today we are at 19. So the kind of explosion of data that we are seeing also reflects on our own platform. I took out a 18-month period growth, and the numbers were mind-boggling. 2,062% growth in OTT, CDN, uh, hosting, which was at the last, had 590%. ISP traffic was up by 982%. And I can keep on giving you the numbers.
Yeah.
So you are already one step ahead of the curve when it comes to growth happening. And I'm very hopeful that as much as you have the internet service providers who now we are trying to convert in our small way into digital interconnection service providers. Because those are the SMEs who are taking the onslaught of the telcos and losing their ground on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I go and tell him that, buddy, you have your last miles in these SME enterprises. You have my port connectivity for peering. White label my services from Direct Cloud and Maps and make more money out of your customer there. So these are the initiatives that I think have been taken well. Everything, like it or not, is put out on LinkedIn. So we only talk what we can walk. And I'm very hopeful that peering in itself, both for enterprises as well as for SME, SMB, and ISPs, is going to take the next leapfrogging with whatever little bit effort we are able to make.
That's a hopeful note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
for
you
this
very much.
fireside chat. A
Thank
pleasure
you.
talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.